Yeah.
Oh man, look at that. We are live.
We are officially live. And
Mm-hmm.
oh man,
We're
it
live on
tells you
both
on Facebook
platforms
in
as
a
well.
whole new way now. I don't know.
Oh, does it?
Nice.
Look at
Yeah.
that.
Your little emblem glows red.
Ooh, I like that.
I know,
We got the red glow
it's
going.
it's evil. Evil. It's a little SpongeBob reference if you didn't know. Um Here we go. All right, we're all shared
Good
up.
way.
We're all
Yeah,
shared up.
sharing it like
Okay.
like uh like we're bearing it, man.
What?
Shared. Look at that. Like it.
Um okay, it's gonna be a quick one. Just so you
Yes.
guys know, I have a gig tonight. First one of the year with a band in Kansas, actually. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's over at Margarita's Cantina.
Mm-hmm.
This place is popping, dude. And by the time we get there, there's going to be a crowd of 100, or sorry, a birthday party of 100 people.
Oh man, that's awesome.
I
It's
know.
gonna be
I'm like,
amazing.
yeah, I'm like, how? So that's starting off. And this is indoors, so it's just I think it's gonna be a wild time. The other thing, because we love to be walking around and stuff, there's a staircase right attached to the stage. I'm like, bro, I'm definitely going up there.
Yeah,
I'm
man, that'll be awesome. That'll be great.
yeah, yeah. So today we are talking about inflation. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, as we know, we're all talking about it. It's a little bit of a follow up from what we were talking about last week, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
the big thing to me is so it's two things. It's how this is impacting us, but it's also why,
Yeah.
and where does this come from? So I think President Biden outlined it in his State of the Union address the other day. A little bit. He touched on it just a smidgen, you might say. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we can expound upon that. Really, what he said was, you know, people are paying more for companies are paying more for the exporting of production, right? Having to
Mm-hmm.
ship things all over the world. And his argument was that if they did it here in America, that it would save them cost.
Yeah.
So um, and not everybody agrees with that, but that is a factor, or it could be a factor. I don't think it's anywhere near to the whole story, but we're going to talk about that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we're also going to talk about Denison's first experience in an electric vehicle, man, which comes at a timely. I mean, this whole thing's timely because that is really a big portion of this is cars. Actually, and we'll start recording and I'll mention this, but a third of inflation is due to the car market in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. So um, I say we start recording, and Denison, I think you kick us off, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me get this set here because apparently it doesn't know what it wants to do. The host has joined. I am the host. I am the Senate.
Oh, that's strange. It looks like you
Here we go.
dropped
Technology's not been our
on
friend
our
today.
recording side, at least.
It's really not been my friend all week, to be
There
honest.
we go.
There we go. Let me run and grab a little something real quick that I feel like is important to this production value.
Okay, do it. Do it up, man. Do it up. Yeah. So this is gonna be great. It's gonna be great, guys. How you all doing today? This fine evening. Let's see. But we're gonna wait for John for him to get his production stuff going on. yeah, my week has been, or I should really, you know what? I'm actually going to talk about this. So, while we're waiting on John, you know, it's interesting because, our topic this week, or really, yeah, just this week is for inflation, which is interesting because I don't know, it's like the last few years it hasn't been we haven't had any weird issues or any bad issues when it came to inflation, but this year has been crazy, very, very crazy. And so, oh, there he is. You're back.
Oh man, I just want to make sure that this looks good. I don't have any pie face action going.
You don't want any pie face, man. Yeah, that would be problematic.
Yeah, you don't want any pie face action, man. If you ever seen
Hmm.
some pie and then you look
Don't
at
want to
my
look like a pie, man. Be problems.
you'd be like, wow, there's some stark similarities here. Okay. Yeah, what a day this has been. I'm not even gonna get into it, but it's gonna be a great evening. So here we go. That's all that matters. Okay. Here we go. Less pie action. Okay. Heck yeah. All right. Okay, here we go. Now we're gonna start recording. And when we do, why don't you start us off, intro the inflation discussion. I think we can sprinkle in your experience with the EV in the convo,
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Okay, cool.
Alrighty. So tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready, dude. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. So what's really interesting. I went to Target today, or actually the other day. Strange way to talk about inflation. So, but I went to Target and I was buying up groceries or whatever like that. And usually I try to do like about a week to 2 weeks worth of shopping for groceries, so that way I'm kind of good. And then it's one big lump sum, but it usually isn't as bad. And I noticed like normal supplies or whatever like that, like food and stuff like that, were the prices were elevated a little bit, but it wasn't like super crazy or whatever. But when I went by, I was just kind of perusing and stuff like that, and I went by like a lot of the Target's got their little technology center or whatever like that.
Sure.
That's kind of where I started seeing a lot of the crazy inflation, or at least just crazy different when it came to prices and stuff like that. Like for instance, I was just looking for looking around just to see how expensive like a normal USB cable, like a USB-C cable is.
Oh, sure.
Because I love getting different. I like getting tons of those because those are always helpful and stuff like that. Plus, it seems to be like every single time that you're looking for one of those cables, they just disappear. And then when you don't need it, it always appears out of nowhere.
Right.
And yeah, I saw them, and it was like $10. There was one that was $10. The cable was $10, which was kind of crazy. And then I found another one. I went on Amazon because I was like, okay, well, I can find one on Amazon super cheap, super easy, all that other good stuff. And I found the same exact one on Amazon still for $10, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah, right.
And so, and then at the same time, when I went to go check out, I saw that it was just a lot more expensive. And so that was kind of one of the things that was really interesting when it came to, I guess, inflation's always kind of been there, but it was the first time for me to actually like see it live.
Sure.
Far more than what I feel like we've all kind of had to deal with before. And so that is kind of going from that, and then going into more along the lines of just kind of seeing it in total. That is kind of where we got a little bit of the idea for talking about this topic, but it's also submitted from, I got it actually from one of the students that I worked with. Um, they actually submitted this topic, which is really, really
Awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out
but
to
yeah, exactly.
shout out to them. Well,
Um,
I think that's awesome that we are getting submissions from all over. Thank you so much for sharing this. And anytime that you are listening to these episodes, it is an open opportunity for you to submit a topic of your own. So whatever is on your mind or um, has kept coming up in your world, for the past week between each episode, send us what you're
mhm,
thinking, and it'll be featured on an upcoming episode of the Catch Up Podcast, man. So um, definitely like setting the groundwork well. Inflation is everywhere. Most people are noticing this at the gas pump, but it's not fully related to inflation. That's a bit of a separate issue.
mhm,
Um, so this is something that's been creeping up. Well, it's something that's always happening, no matter what. Well, there there are some random outliers that could prevent it from happening, but for the most part, it's always happening. So it's definitely going to be good to talk about and kind of explain that, and definitely feel free to set the groundwork for that. But this is something that I think more people want to know more about, why, when it could stop. So I'm glad that we have the topic brought up. I say we just go ahead and get into it, man.
yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. Let's
Okay.
go ahead and do the intro.
Alrighty.
All right. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everybody? I'm John,
And I'm Denison.
and this is the catch up. Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Oh man, there it is. All right,
Yeah.
I'll jump right back into it.
Well,
And I'll just
yeah,
do
no,
an explanation if you want. Oh wait, actually, did you want to do
the
um
promotions
yeah,
in the
promotions?
ocean, dude.
Forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Promotion in the ocean, dude. All right.
Gotta let people know what it's about.
Yeah. Um, all right. All right. 3, 2, 1. Before we continue with our topic, we want to remind you the best ways to support the show. There are really 3 easy ways. 1, leave a rating review wherever you're listening and subscribe if you like it. Not only will that keep you up to date with each episode and let us know how we're doing, but it'll also tell the algorithms, because these might as well be humans at this point, that people are reacting to this show and they should share with more people. So whether you're watching the live stream or listening to the recorded version, go ahead and do that for us. If you want to support us monetarily, go to our websites, nosignalrocks.com. There's a drop down menu that takes you to the Catch Up Podcast page. And it's it's linked in the description of this episode, no matter where you're watching. And
Hmm.
then the best way to just get in on the conversation with us, have a catch up with us live in real time, is to go to our Facebook or our YouTube page. Those are linked as well. It's facebook.com/the catch-up cast, or just type in our podcast title on YouTube. You'll see it. We go live every Friday, so you can jump in on discussion with us in real time as we take these viewer submitted topics every single week, and
Hmm.
get on the conversation with us. It's a really great opportunity. We'd love to share it with you. So yeah, with that said, man, kind of continue on with what you're talking about with inflation.
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of bringing it back a little bit. So, um, the inflation kind of started, and we all kind of know a little bit. One of the big sources of it is kind of during the pandemic. Um, source of the inflation was just due to supply chain issues, right? It's something that I feel like we are now finally starting to actually feel the effects of the supply chain shortages, because it's not just that, um, it's hard to get your favorite iPad or whatever like that, but it's also that they're not able to make as many of them, or it's also that the resources are having other environmental factors, because there are other environmental factors that are also having issues with that. But it's also, I think, one of the biggest contributors, which I read about this in an article the other day, was the fact that the way that, so I'm going to get all technical and kind of boring, but I'll try to make it super fun. But
Right.
essentially, right? So at least in America, right, the Federal Reserve Bank is what controls all of our interest rates. They try to keep interest, or not interest, but they do also control a lot of that, but
We do.
they control our inflation rate.
Okay.
Now, most people would say, well, inflation's bad, right? But technically, for the economy, it's actually the right thing. It's what you want. So you want a
Oh yeah.
steady source of inflation. So usually, the Federal Reserve tries to keep inflation around 2%, which isn't, it's small enough to where it keeps the prices of goods at a reasonable price, and most consumers won't notice, but it also kind of keeps things going in a higher direction to kind of just keep the economy going.
Right, and they won't notice, by the way, because it matches up with those cost of living merit increases that most people get, right? So,
Exactly,
right,
exactly,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
So they usually regulate that. Now, when COVID hit, right, and a lot of people got laid off and a lot of people lost their jobs, um, they essentially, what the Federal Reserve did was they said, hey, let's make it easier for not just businesses but also people to be able to borrow more money, so that way they can get by with what's going on. It'll help jumpstart the economy, because that's the thing: when everyone loses their jobs and essentially people can't go outside and they can't spend their money, or less willing to spend their money, it's not good for the economy, because then there's nobody to buy stuff, right? So
right,
Federal
definitely,
Reserve was like, hey, like, y'all got to buy stuff. So, so they said, let's inject a whole bunch of money. So that's where we got a lot of our stimulus checks and all sorts of other stuff. Like businesses got their own kind of version of a stimulus check, um, and stuff like that. So those measures helped to support the economy. Now, normally when stuff like what happened during the pandemic happens, for most economies, they just kind of we fall into a super bad place or whatever like that, and then we eventually edge ourselves up. Well, we kind of avoided that,
sure,
and through these measures, but the side effect of that is a higher inflation, because it's essentially the inflation also kind of slowed down too during it was actually under the 2% mark, which most people would be like, oh, less inflation, that'd be perfect. But the problem is, again, cost of goods, when it comes to like businesses and stuff and revenue, they need, or it's, if they start having supply chain issues, which they did,
hmm
where it became harder to get the materials that they need, they have to raise their prices. But if, say, it's harder for them to borrow money, which also affects how inflation works or whatever like that,
yeah,
then they can't buy as many goods. So then that means they can't produce as many goods, which means that eventually those prices are going to have to go up anyway. So um, during the pandemic, the essentially the inflation rate actually went low, really low. Um, as a side effect of them lending out more money and giving more money out. Um, and in the short term, that works great, because everyone is able to essentially survive and they're able to stay afloat. But in the long term, you get these inflation. I know some economists are say inflation adjustments, which is essentially you're going to have a very high jump of inflation, a very high jump percentage when it comes to inflation, um, from the normal rate. So I think right now, I think I saw something like we're close to like a 6% um, form of inflation, or 6% percentage of inflation right now, which is kind of crazy.
yeah, for sure,
um,
for sure.
so uh, essentially, it's a lot of economists are saying that it's just a price or it's an inflation adjustment, which is it jump a big hike just to get back up to where the normal levels should have been because of the low interest rates that, or not interest, gosh darn, inflation rates that we've been experiencing.
Right.
But, or go ahead. I didn't want to.
Well, so are these things that you hear a lot of blame get tossed around? Are these things that like administrations push for? So keep those inflation rates low, so they look good because you've not had to pay a lot for a lot of goods or anything. But then over time, like what happened to Joe Biden, right? So he looks
Mhm.
bad because all this inflation is taking place during his administration. But for example, like the housing crisis that happened, where it led to the Great Recession, those were because of decisions made in the administrations before Obama, but it started when he was in office. And so, or it really got bad, I should say, when he was in office. So he got blamed for a lot of it.
Mhm.
So is this kind of a similar situation?
Yes. Yes, it is a very similar situation to where, yeah, it's previous essentially events. I'm not going to say it's previous events and not being prepared for said previous events kind of started us down the path of these hyperinflation that we're getting now.
Sure.
Um, just because of certain old policies or policies that were enacted during that time that also had a negative effect. And then COVID didn't make it any better. I would say a lot of the issues and a lot of the inflation that we're encountering right now is due to, like, COVID is essentially the final nail in the coffin, essentially, that started it all and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that is really what made it have to reassess. And there's a lot of things going on right now to try and lower those inflation rates back down.
Hmm.
uh, Prices have gotten really bad. You look at,
Yeah.
not just, you were talking about Target earlier, and Darian chimed in on the live stream. He said, Target's the devil. I'd go in for just a few things and end up spending over $150 not getting what I intended to get. Yeah, except now it'd be about $200 with
Hmm.
inflation. Uh, so yeah, it's interesting how it's in fact impacting a wide variety of industries. But I heard the other day that the auto industry is responsible for a third of inflation. And
Hmm.
what's interesting is you look at the high prices and then you look at the uh, high cost for electric vehicles, which is something we talked about. And I said, it's technically, it should be cheaper for these manufacturers to make these electric vehicles, but they're charging more for it.
Hmm.
Wild to me, just crazy.
Yeah.
But that was actually something that was addressed in the State of the Union, is that we need to bring the cost of these down because no one, I mean, it was a quick hit on this topic, but it was basically saying people are not going to want to move to that if it's going to be that expensive, right?
Hmm.
The saving of on average $80 a month by not having to go to the pump um, is something that would be counteracted by having to pay $20,000 more for an electric vehicle, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so like I said, um, that's a big portion of it, and I think a lot of auto manufacturers are kind of doing what the oil industry did several years ago with price gouging and all that kind of stuff. Um, and when it's such an integral part of the economy, that's the thing. That's what drives up inflation, right? So,
Yeah.
food service, big part of the economy. When cost of goods go up, that makes everything go up. Automotive industry, gas and oil, those type of things are fully integrated in the economy. When their prices go up, it affects everything. So I do know that you had an experience, really your first long-term experience, right, with an electric car this past week. I know it's kind of a side tangent, but I want to hear about it. What was that like?
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. So I had the amazing opportunity to be able to drive an electric vehicle. I have an amazing girlfriend who was able to rent that um, for me, and so we got to kind of drive it around in it for a whole day and kind of got that whole electric car experience, which was really neat.
Right.
Um, so uh, uh, so yeah, it was really interesting. Um, so I got to drive a Tesla. It was a Tesla Model 3 for the 2% of people who might actually be interested. But
Oh man,
uh,
that's the majority of our audience. You know that. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, it was pretty fun. It's a really different experience because you kind of have to rewire your brain, and it's not just on like, oh, well, I have to plug it into a wall instead of instead of
Right. You
pumping the
stop
gas or
at
whatever.
Kroger and you're like, what? Where does this go?
Yeah. um and it's not just that, but it's also like just how a lot of them are designed. So like the Tesla that we had or whatever like that, and a lot of newer electric vehicles also have this, is there's like regenerative braking. So it means that you are charging the batteries um, using, I think it's resistive braking or something like that, where essentially um, it uses that to recharge the battery, or add a little bit of the charge of the battery. So, but with that, that means that you're not going to be using the brake pedal like at all. So, which is really weird. It's a really weird feeling, and it's really different. And it's also it also had like really fast acceleration, which was something that I'm not used to. I mean,
Yeah. Sure.
my car is pretty fast, but it's not that fast. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that was a big difference, and so I can see why it has a higher price tag, but I also do, with that whole experience, right? I did see some of the savings, right? So I plugged in my house, and it didn't cost like it. I know for sure throughout we went, I don't know, less than 100 miles, I think, maybe 100
Sure.
miles, I can't remember. But we used superchargers in two places, or I used them twice, which was kind of an interesting experience in itself. But I think I filled like 50 miles on the battery, or 50 or something like that. I got
Yeah.
50 miles, and it was there for maybe 10 minutes, maybe more than that. But
Yeah.
that was like $3 just to do that.
Oh,
And
geez.
then and
That's
then I Yeah, exactly, which was really cool. And then I went and did a supercharger before I had to return it. And that got me from, I think it was like 100 miles of range to 214. Um, and I got in that, all in total cost $6
Jeez.
to do that, which is
Wow.
crazy, right? It's
It
it's
is.
you can't do that in a gas powered car. So I do see the savings, but I guess that's the problem, is that you still have to factor in the cost of buying an equally equipped gas powered car. Like, yes, you do save money, but you don't save. Do you truly save enough to get your money back, recoup your money back fast enough? And I guess that's the
Right.
hard part to sell.
And I would argue no. I mean, how many years would you have to own that electric vehicle for the battery savings you get by filling it up with electricity to equal um, you know, paying gas
Yeah.
and taking the impact on the environment out of it, that is what we're looking at. And if you look at the difference in the price, I mean, it often is for a lot of these electric vehicles. You often are paying 10, 20, $25,000 more just because they're electric, right?
Yep.
So
Exactly.
imagine if the majority of us accepted that cost, right? And we all start paying more. So, like, what was a good example, right? The base model of the new Silverado EV will be $41,000, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the current base model of a Silverado, I'm looking it up right now so I can make sure I get this right.
Get a
But
good apples to apples comparison.
yeah, so if I go here, no, those are nice trucks, but still, the current one, RST model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that is pretty nice. It's the RS truck is what it stands for,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that is 51,000. So that's 10,000 more than a new base model electric version. The current base model, from what I'm seeing here, is 32,500.
Wow.
Um, and so let's see. But that's MSRP. Often you can get it. Yeah, so it starts at 31,000. So when it goes all electric, there's going to be a $10,000 price increase for that.
Yeah.
When again, I know there's a lot of new technology, but that's going into it. But man, the things that are going into that truck to power it, to propel it, way simpler. you know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
not even a comparison. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know. It is frustrating, but that's how this ties into inflation as well. Is that if we decide that we're okay paying these higher prices because we're wowed by this electric vehicle, which again, those were the first cars in the 1880s were electric.
Yeah.
Um, then we're going to submit ourselves to paying way higher prices, and that's just what it is. So yeah, bring it back to inflation, which it's cool that you got that experience with the Tesla. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And definitely we'll have to do an all electric model review on an upcoming episode. I think it'd be fun for us to rent that
Oh yeah.
um, and do it. But what will it take? See, you hear a lot of rhetoric from politicians that are obviously in favor of stopping this inflation, which everybody is, but they say making it go back down, making prices go back down. I don't think. I mean, that's not common for that to happen, right? It
Yeah.
usually
Exactly.
doesn't reverse itself. It may stagnate, but it doesn't really reverse itself.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, where do you begin to try? Is it lowering interest rates? The president said no new taxes the other day at the State of the Union, so it's not going to be that.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes
Yeah.
it makes
No. Yeah, I mean you're right though. Like usually you there's not a way to reverse because that's the thing, right? You're not going to tell a company and say like, "Hey, I need you to back up on those prices that you just increased." Because
yeah,
it doesn't work that way, right? So, yes, it would be to slow the rate of inflation down to back to like the reasonable levels or whatever like that. Usually, the way the Fed does that is that they, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, they lower interest rates to a point to where it becomes again easier for people to buy more. And then mainly it starts with companies, and then the companies essentially move that down to other stuff.
sure,
Um, but I think that that's kind of one of the weird things for us to do because it's like I think there's a point. I think we're getting close to a point of no return where there's, and I think that's kind of what the Federal Reserve is a little bit scared of is that if we do lean more into let's just try to kill this interest rate as much as possible, then um, if it is too late, you can lower the interest rate, but you'll get another balloon eventually or really quickly. It'll
yeah,
just
right,
be a putting another band-aid over, right? Um, and it's not like you can give out more money because again, that also can be a leading factor of inflation because you're just printing a lot more money, which can and has the possibility of devaluing the currency, which then also leads to more inflation. So, it's a tricky situation, and I think the
Definitely.
biggest issue that a lot of us are all facing is like, where do normal people how do normal people get used to this, right?
Mhm.
Because and how is it even possible to? Because it's like when you have a rising cost of living and your wages aren't keeping up with that rising cost of living, because of inflation, um, you're kind of stuck in a like a gap, essentially, to
Sure.
where you just got that big merit increase, but it got eaten up in 5 seconds because, um,
Absolutely.
groceries now cost the same amount or cost more, or the new car that you need to get just now costs more money of um, because prices are going up. And then,
Mhm.
of course, the supply chain shortages don't make it any better, because that means the ones, this is going back to the auto industry. This is one of the big reasons why inflation's so high there, is because they're not able to produce enough cars. And so a lot of these dealerships, since most auto manufacturers can't, actually all auto manufacturers other than I think Tesla and some of these newer companies, can't actually sell directly to customers, because of legislation. um, they are, or these dealerships are taking advantage of the lower supply and raising the prices, which makes it even more unaffordable for most consumers to be able to buy it, right? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
the sad part is, now we're at a point to where buying a vehicle at MSRP is like a big deal.
Yeah. Right.
Where
100%.
beforehand you could buy it without, or it's
Do it
you
under that.
brag about how much under MSRP you got it.
Yeah. 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 So, with that said, how do you kind of weather the storm? It's interesting. This job switch that I had. You start making more money, and then the price of everything goes up.
Mhm.
Um, so how, as anyone really, you're the finance dude, that I've always relied on. So what would you do to kind of weather this storm until everything balances out, which by the way could take years.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good question. I would probably say, of course, staying on top of your budget, if you have a budget. If you don't have one, I would highly suggest you try and do a budget. It's really
Yeah.
helpful. I found that for me, when I started budgeting, it was like free money.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
um, it
Definitely.
sounds weird, but it's like exactly where all your money is going, and so you have a higher control. Because a lot of times, sometimes you find that it's like, oh wait, I spent this much money on blah blah blah, and you're like, oh, I can cut that out, and you didn't
Yeah.
even, and so then you just gained like X amount of money or whatever like that. And then I
Mhm.
also find that, um, so budgeting, great. Lowering debts, also great, because that can also, if there's less bills that you have to pay, say it's credit card debt, car debt, whatever, um, if those disappear, and I've talked to other people about this, but it's like, if those disappear, you literally just gain. So if you literally just gained X amount of dollars. So if your car payment is like $500 a month, if you get rid of that car payment, not saying that it's easy, but I'm just saying, if you really focus in and try to get rid of that car payment, that just gave you $500 a month that you just got back. Like, it just,
Basically.
you just got a pay raise.
Yeah, pretty much.
um,
Pretty much.
so I know these aren't the easiest things, but I find that they do kind of help weather the storm. And then if you are in a position to, um, I don't like to suggest this, but it is something that is valid, especially nowadays. Um, if you are in a position to where you can move to a different job that may pay you more,
Sure.
it is statistically, um, there's a high chance, or there's statistically saying, wise, staying at a company for a long time isn't advantageous for your
Not
overall
anymore.
money growth. It's
Not
actually
anymore,
far
man.
more advantageous for you to move. And in some ways, it's actually better for not just the company that you're at, but it's also better for new companies to not have their employees stay with them for so long, because
Sure.
it sounds weird, and it does kind of sound, you know, less helpful, but um, essentially what happens is, by you leaving, that means, yes, they have to fill your position, but they can also fill that position with a new person who has new ideas, new thoughts, and a new way of thinking that may help them drive, or may drive them into a different direction, or what have you. And then you do the same by moving over to a different company, right? A different
Yeah.
place of work, whatever, whether it be within your own company or in a different position, but all of those help eventually, essentially.
Sure.
So that is, and plus you get a pay raise out of it too. And a lot of times you'll get more of a pay raise, especially if you leave your company, you'll get more of a pay raise than you would if you were to do like a merit increase, or even if you moved within your own company to a higher position, you're actually getting more by leaving your company, which don't like
Yeah.
to advise that, but
Well,
it
on
is
that,
kind of a thing.
you have the reason, a lot of people don't recognize this or want to admit it or whatever, but a lot of people, don't stay at jobs for the long term anymore because pensions aren't really a thing. And that was what kept
Hmm.
people at jobs for a long time.
Yeah.
Pensions. Think about, in addition to your retirement fund, Social Security, 401k, you have this guaranteed money and benefits that come from your tenure there, right?
Yeah.
That would definitely keep me in a place for a while if I halfway liked the job and I knew that 15 or 20 years there would get me something that would benefit me the rest of my life, but those aren't things anymore. So, especially with the internet making it so easy to self-employ, more
Hmm.
and more people are doing exactly that. But they're being hit hard too by the inflation, because
Yeah.
they're the ones
Yeah.
that have to pay the most for supplies
Hmm.
and are not really getting much unless they're ordering large quantities. They're not really getting much benefit of it. So
Exactly.
the more than 150 million workers identified in the United States, 16 million are self-employed. So what is that? Roughly just over 10%.
Hmm.
Um, so that's pretty amazing. At 1 in 10
Yeah.
people are self-employed.
Yeah.
Um, that's a big part of the economy, and so they're getting hit hard too. There's just so many factors that go into this, but um, it really is fascinating from if you look at this from the level of maybe not even considering how you're being impacted, right? You're just looking at this from how it works. It really is fascinating that this is even a thing because I'm gonna sound crazy here right now, but money is a thought, right? Like money is
Yeah.
just something we created, and
Hmm.
because of this, fictitious way that we've designed to exchange, buy, or sell, buy, exchange goods, we've now based our entire lives around it, our economy, our well-being, all that. When really, we could just be we could be trading melons for coconuts,
Yeah, man.
um,
Or chickens for goats. You know, I
yeah.
got five
Oh man,
chickens. You got a goat that I like. Take these chickens, man.
that's what I'm saying. If I had a goat, man, I'd hang on to that goat, dude. Goat cheese,
Hmm.
nuts.
That's true.
Lawnmowers built in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
You're right.
great, great benefits. But um, these really are some huge things that are impacted by this idea that we had to come up with basically a hierarchy to decide who is good, who's not, who's poor, who's rich.
Mhm.
Obviously this is thousands of years ago that we're tracing back to, um, but here we are, and now it's impacting all of our lives in a big way at levels never before seen in this country, right? So
Exactly.
it's crazy. But definitely hope it slows down to soon. The gas side of things, was already creeping up for sure,
Mhm.
but for the same reason. But this explosion of it, which is probably not the right word to use, but it's definitely linked to Ukraine.
Yes.
Everything that's going on over there.
Mhm.
Uh,
Which we talked
Russia,
about last week.
yeah, Russia will not be exporting oil reserves. Yeah, we did talk about this last week, and so if you missed that, go back and check that out.
Mhm.
Um, but these are all things that are caused by that, and so that hopefully two things will go down. We're one of 30 countries that are releasing our oil reserves, and hopefully that'll help the prices. And then hopefully, if there is peace brought by this, that will help that calm down too.
Mhm.
Um, so just a lot of different irons in the fire. Gas, like I said, inherently this is making other things inflate even more just because the gas prices went up.
Yep.
So yeah, hopefully things can calm down. We did see this around the same time when Katrina hit and the gas prices just exploded because oil companies claimed they couldn't work. um, but that did cause prices of everything to go up because of that. So and it did come back down from the gas price standpoint. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can see some of that in the near future. But yeah, this was a good discussion, man. I just want to remind everybody the best ways to support us. We're live streaming on Facebook and YouTube right now. So go ahead and follow us and subscribe over there. Um, leave us a rating and review and subscribe if you like us. Let us know how we're doing, what we can improve upon, what you like. Um, and then go to our website, nosignalrocks.com. There's a drop down menu where you can find the Catch Up podcast. All this is also linked wherever you're watching or listening. And, we have hats, beanies, phone cases, man, mugs, shirts,
Hoodie.
hoodies. Hoodies are
Mhm.
not really going to be in style anymore because it's
True.
getting warm. But get you a good clean t-shirt, man. We'll probably have some more stuff coming soon. So we got a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of ways to connect with you and support the show. Do you have anything else you want to add, bro?
The only thing I wanted to add is just um don't worry, we'll make it through it. I think that's the big thing because I feel like a lot of people feel that this inflation just feels like it's never ending. But the thing is, this happens.
Yeah,
Uh, there's
regularly.
a cycle to everything, so we just have to, um, you know, weather it just for a little bit longer, and we'll be all
We will be all right. Just like
right.
Kendrick Lamar said, man.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, no, this is good. It's a good discussion. Thank you guys for tuning in and jumping in the comments section. Please remember to leave us wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. Leave us your topic suggestion, what's been going on with your world, what's had you talking, and what keeps popping up in your head. And let us know, and we'll discuss it on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Thank you again to Denison student who suggested this one. Obviously, inflation next to Ukraine is what is on everybody's mind right now.
mhm.
Um, so it's a great topic suggestion. So, yes, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching and for listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.